Here with 9 Wants to Know investigative reporter Jeremy Jojola, and we're talking about the. There's no other way to put it. I know it's a little subjective here, but saying the gruesome video from the body camera footage of Aurora police officer John Halpert pistol whipping, beating Kyle Vincent, the victim in this case here. And Jeremy, you had the opportunity to interview the victim in this case earlier on today.
Yeah, this morning we talked to Kyle Vincent. He's a 29-year-old man, and this was a man that underwent a substantial incident here that the nation saw in this body camera footage. I mean, this footage was shared across the country because it was just so disturbing. You had this officer pointing his duty weapon at the back of his head, screaming at him, and then hitting him in the head with a pistol. And immediately, within 3 days, we had the chief of police come forward and release the footage. And what was seen in that footage, I mean, we've played it on our air. It's a disturbing video. We've been around as journalists for a while, and I think that's probably, at least in my subjective opinion, probably one of the worst body camera pieces of footage I've ever seen when it comes to the brutality of an officer, committing against someone else. So I talked with him this morning, and I was expecting him to be sullen. I was expecting Kyle Vincent to be like very, downtrodden in a way, but he actually has a very, very interesting, positive outlook about this because according to his view, he feels very lucky to be alive. He thought during that interview when he was talking to me, he was waiting for the bullet to come out of that gun. And he felt terrified. I mean, you hear it in his voice when you're watching that body camera footage. You hear it. I mean, he sounds terrified and scared. And he said thought he was going to die. And so today, he says he wants to use his voice to make changes in police departments.
Well, from there over to, we have about a minute excerpt here from your interview with Kyle Vincent from this morning. If we could go ahead and roll that, definitely want to take a listen here.
It's remarkable how good you look, because in that video, the injuries were substantial.
I know. I tell people I'm like Wolverine. I just kind of like healed up real quick. I kind of got blessed for it, man.
Have you been able to watch the body camera footage?
I watched a majority of it. Not all at once, but it's kind of hard to take in. But I'm just thankful. I'm thankful I'm still here because I thought I was going to die or be another Elijah McClain or George Floyd. I have stitches in my head, and then I had a black eye. This is all from a pistol, and then my chest. My chest hurts a lot.
You talk about the physical injuries.
Yeah.
What about any sort of mental health issues?
Yeah,
that you're facing?
nightmares and and just kind of flashbacks.
If Officer Halpert was here right now, what would you say to him?
I would just ask why. What made you that angry to use that force?
All right, so there is the interview there with Kyle Vincent, and he kind of ends by that question. He put it to him, Jeremy, about what he would do if he had Officer Halpert with him there. And to your point, it wasn't as maybe vindictive of an answer as you might have expected.
Yeah, he's not. He wants justice. I asked him. He is. What's remarkable about this case? He is now considered a victim by the very department that had an officer attack him. He is considered a victim in their eyes. And when you watch that body camera footage, it's clear this man was beaten with the pistol, and that was a clear department violation. I asked him. I said, what do you want out of your case? What do you want moving forward? He wouldn't get too deep into the weeds about what type of justice he wants, but he wants justice. He wants some sort of justice. So we'll see what happens with these criminal cases moving forward. I mean, you have the officer that did the pistol whipping. He resigned. We'll see what happens with him. And then you have the other officer, Francine Martinez. She was arrested because, according to the police department, she failed to intervene. And so we'll see where these cases go. But there is an internal affairs investigation in all of this, and we'll see what comes out of that. But it's clear that this moved pretty fast. I mean, this incident happened on July 23rd, Friday afternoon, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a call, from what I understand, it was a trespassing call. These officers showed up. And this incident happened, and then by Tuesday, the following Tuesday, the officers were arrested. They were facing potential charges, and the chief of police released this footage and had a press conference about it, and she called it disgusting.
And it's striking. I mean, to your point, it's been 11 days since this incident actually happened. So this is a fairly short period of time to turn this around. And as you mentioned, from APD in particular, there was a lot of transparency. The body camera footage was shown entirely in full, right off the bat. A lot of, again, maybe, as you mentioned, Vincent is considered to be a victim, in this case, already by APD.
Yeah, and I wonder, my question is, would we have seen this response from the Aurora Police Department a year ago, 2-3 years ago? This department has had tremendously its share of officers making news for doing really bad things. I mean, when you have the officer that was seen on footage just drunk in a patrol unit, and that officer was able to keep his job. Then you've had other cases of police brutality and high-profile lawsuits. And so there is a lot of criticism directed at the Aurora Police Department that department has some severe issues with culture in the department. And culture change doesn't happen overnight. I did see online and social media when the chief did come forward and immediately released his body camera footage. 3 days later, he was given a lot of credit. But that's a starting point here. I mean, you can't change a department's culture overnight. But what it is a sign of is that I think police departments know, especially with the new state law, with the Police Accountability Act that passed recently, and that is now in effect, parts of it anyway, that police departments know body camera is going to be required. Eventually, the public's going to get their hands on the body camera footage. And when it is seen by the public, there's going to be outcry. And it's likely better for police agencies to be more proactive in their response to something like this, rather than having to either cover it up or wait till it comes out, because as the old saying goes, sometimes the cover-up is worse than the actual crime. And so I think in this case, this is going to be perhaps maybe not a precedent, but maybe an interesting starting point for the Aurora Police Department to try and clean up its culture that it has a lot of criticisms about.
One other thing that was striking to me was during the interview was Kyle Vincent directly said that he had kind of in his eyes the possibility of being the next George Floyd, next Elijah McClain.
Yeah.
He directly says that in there, which I also found quite striking.
Yeah, he says he wants to use his voice to call attention to the fact. He told me he was experiencing homelessness this day when this happened. He just went into Starbucks, wanted to sit down, and then he eventually left the Starbucks, and he said police responded to some sort of trespassing call, and he said that he was told by the officers to get out of the way and sit down, and then that's when two other companions or two other men that were with him split. They took off. He stayed. And that's when they put their hands on him, and that's when the pistol whipping incident happened. But one of the first things he told me during that interview, he said that he almost was another Elijah McClain, another George Floyd. And he feels that he's lucky today that he has his life because he can now use his incident to propel change forward. And I think, no doubt, this case is likely going to cost taxpayers in Aurora a lot of money, because there is likely, very likely, as the pattern goes, anytime something like this makes the public eye, there's going to be either a lawsuit or a claim is going to be filed, and taxpayers will have to likely finance the settlement payout that will likely come out of this.
So that's obviously a big part of it as well, and that will be probably over the next few weeks. I know that Vincent's lawyers put out a statement basically saying that they feel that this was perhaps racially motivated, that this was that Vincent wants to be part of that change. Any other big takeaways? I mean, I know you said that you didn't see any physical, despite the fact that he...
Yeah, and I asked him about that.
Yeah.
He talks about how he had a black eye. I mean, you watch that body camera footage, and you see this huge knot start to develop within seconds on the side of his head. I mean, it's like this like really bad knot on the side of his head, and it's bleeding and blistering, and the blood is running down his face. And when you watch that as a person who's not there, I mean, it's disturbing. And so I can only imagine the trauma that he's still dealing with, and his attorneys, have indicated, yeah, I mean, there's likely going to be not only everlasting physical, injuries. He says his legs hurt, they're scratched up, his chest hurts, because he said the officer was pointing not only the gun in the back of his head, but in his chest, and he had, a black eye. But there's likely going to be, everlasting, according to his attorney, PTSD. Going through something like this. And I asked him, well, were you able to watch the body camera footage? And he said he watched most of it, but he could not finish it.
And he said he was already having nightmares.
Yeah. And flashbacks.
Flashbacks.
Yeah,
I mean,
nightmares and flashbacks. Yeah.
Again, it's terrible video. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that. But Jeremy, we certainly appreciate a few minutes of your time and sitting down
Sure.
with us to give us some insight about what you saw there.
Yeah.
So thanks, Jeremy.
Sure thing.